you have multiple libraries handling different queues in your project. It gets very difficult to manage after a while. What you will notice is that over here, if you just use a string, doesn't matter what string we put in. You just have a single, okay? And queue message works for all your loops. You don't have to have an enqueue message for loop number 1, enqueue message for loop number 2, enqueue message for loop number 3. In each of them having different enums, okay, for each of those particular enqueue messages. So the reason why we use strings again is because you want to make it easier for you to use the same message handling API for your entire application. You don't need to create one. Okay? Okay, so far still following me, yeah? Okay, yeah? Okay, the next portion that I want to share with you is how they stop two loops. Okay, for those of you who have again gone through COM1 and COM2, you will know very easy one. Stop button on top, create local variable, push down below, right click, change, switching. Simple, finish. Okay, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Okay, and then you will see that here, oh, I have a event structure on top. I just have to put this to stop. And then become true, send the message below, stop. Also can what? That is also true. Now the issue here comes when, what if you want the bottom loop to stop the top loop? How would you do it? Okay? In this instance, this is why we are using the user event. Okay? And how does the user event work? If you are familiar with some other environments, they call it the event callback. Okay, basically you are generating an event programmatically. So there's already an event structure at the top. All you have to do is to generate a user event programmatically, and you are able to stop the top loop. So again here, okay, before the loop start, I'm going to create a user event. Okay, when some stop condition has occurred, just fire user event, and this will be translated to the, it will trigger an event in the event handling loop. Just fire a true, and then you will stop. Okay, and of course at the end, remember to destroy it, otherwise you will have memory leaks. Okay. So we'll go back into this as to why you need to do this, why is it so convoluted, why is it so complicated, when we go into the error handling portion later on. Okay. So again, this is the reason why we need to use user events. Okay, they are the cleanest approach to communicating with an event handling loop from other parts of the code. And of course, if necessary, you can take the approach in QMH and be extended to include more event data or more events. So you can send it from multiple areas of the code. Okay, and the good thing that I think is the most important feature is that the code is already part of the template and you do not require any editing. Basically, once you open up the QMH template, you can forget about this, it will work. Okay, but here I have to explain why we had it there. Okay, so there are of course alternatives that can work as well, possibly, but they are rejected. Okay, number one is adding a timeout case that holds a local variable or a global variable, and then you can stop it from there. So basically all it's saying is, over here, loop, you have a timeout every 100 millisecond, every 200 millisecond, you poll a global variable. Not good, because now we are now using a polling method instead of using what the event structure is supposed to do. Okay? And last but not least, okay, there is also a very something that some people like to use, which is you will notice when in the property node for a lot of the buttons there's value. There's also value bracket signaling. The difference being, if you use the value bracket signaling, it will be captured by the event structure. Okay, so it can be done as well, but again, this will result in a clunky UI. Okay, because what you need to do, you can either use it like that, and you need to initialize here and there. You maybe have to have some hidden controls here and there. It becomes very clunky. Okay, so using the user events is the cleanest approach. Okay, not the only approach, but it's the cleanest approach. Okay, then we can see later why this is so. Okay, I pause for a while. Pause for a while. Okay. Any questions you have so far before I move into error handling and how does the QMH handle errors? Okay, maybe not now. Okay, if you have any questions when you try this out later on at your workplace or in your school institutions, you can of course let us know. We will help you out. Okay. Now I will go into the next portion, which is error handling. Okay? So I know there is a large number of developers who do not want to do this at all. Basically, they only handle errors during development. You develop, this error come out, you fix it. You say something else happens, you fix it. And then you deploy it to your customer side or to somewhere else. Okay, what happens if there is an error that is not accounted for? Usually errors that happen after a long period of time. Okay. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have received a call from a customer, okay, and then the customer tells you exactly what is wrong with your VI? Oh, this particular sub VI, there is a property node that is not supported, therefore I get an empty reference. You're not going to get that. What does your customer say? Brother or sister? Your code not working. How? If you do not have any error handling, how are you supposed to do it? You go back to the customer side, you click run, okay, it works. What's wrong with it? 5 days later, same thing happens. You repeat this over and over again, it's not going to solve your issue. So this is why it's very important for you to have error handling. And error handling in single loop applications, quite simple. Just make sure everything flows. Error, wire to stop, come out, simple error handler, finish. However, in the QMH, because we have multiple loop designs, with multiple loop where errors can happen in either loops, and whichever loop that has an error have to tell the other loop that has an error and please stop. So there is this issue that you need to solve, okay, in this kind of application. Okay, for those of you who have taken level core 2, you will probably have your instructor spend about 1 hour trying to explain the error handler in the producer and consumer loop. And most likely, at the end of that 1 hour, you still don't know what it does. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I get from the people I interact with. Okay, so my answer to that is that when you are using the QMH template, this design pattern, you no need to worry about where the error goes. Let's take a look back at the main panel. Okay, the main code, the block diagram. So you will notice that at the end, oops, sorry, wrong button. You will notice that at the end of every loop, I have this very nice sub VI called error handler event handling loop. And what does it do? Basically, if there is an error that comes in, it's going to go inside here. There is a list of errors that you can choose to ignore. Okay, things that are not important, you expect this kind of errors to occur, you want to ignore, we just put the error codes inside here. Okay, you'll see that the message queue also gets referenced into this particular VI. And what does this do? Very simple. If there is an error, this error comes into a enqueue message. And then that message is error. That's it. Okay, that's all it's doing. It's just have the error put in as a message data and the message is called error. So what happens when it's inside the queue? Okay, again, doesn't matter where it's coming from, there is a message case called error. Error comes in, it fires this particular case structure. All you're doing is taking out the data. Simple error handler. And then what do you do here? Exit. It's sending a message to itself to exit after showing this particular simple error handler window. And what does exit do? Again, exit, okay, stop the event, stop the top loop, close all the queues, exit the program gracefully. Okay, same thing. If you were to stop the event handling loop on top, you will see that. Okay, there's a let me see. Exit. What does it do? You will see that here it is not stopping it immediately. Instead, it is sending to the message handling loop to go to the exit state, go here, and then this message handling will tell the event handling loop to stop. So you will see that there is a very nice pattern that we follow that is very consistent. The reason why we do this is very simple. Okay? We always want to have a safe shutdown procedure. If your program is controlling a very large turbine, a boiler, okay, if there is an error, do you want the turbine to keep on turning? I don't think so. Do you want to have your KID gains to be so high when you want to stop the program? Unlikely. So this is when we need to follow a safe shutdown procedure, and the QMH template already does that. Basically, the only way besides Windows Update, besides that, the only way that your program can exit is by the message handling loop sending the exit message to itself. That's the only way. And then inside here, basically all you have to do is set all your DAQ outputs to 0, digital output 0, everything, do whatever that you need to do. Do it here. So regardless of whether there's an error, there's an emergency stop, somebody press the stop button or whatever, somebody unplug the network port, okay, you will always follow the same shutdown procedure. Go to exit first, shut down everything, and then exit all the loops. Okay? So this is it, and you will notice that at the end of every loop, all you have to do is just put in this guy and put it at the end. If let's say you need to implement another loop, okay, like this, one loop, blah blah blah, all you have to do is basically do this, copy this guy, copy this guy here, and put it at the end. Error handling done. Oh, of course, you need to put in the error lah. There has to be some form of error lah. Otherwise, it will not work. Okay, I'm just going to create a constant. Okay, this can come from anywhere. But basically, that's all you need to do to implement error handling in a new loop. That's all you need to do. Very simple. Okay, so don't have to be worried about it. Don't have to worry about where the data go, blah blah blah. No need to worry. Have a new loop. Plug the guy there. Done. Finish. Okay. So again, okay, we made some revisions. For those of you who are using LabVIEW 2012 or below, okay, it's a bit different. They actually put in the error handling in the DQ message. I won't go into greater detail about that. But basically, if you are using LabVIEW 2013 or later, it's just drag and drop like what I did. Okay? So we have seen a very quick overview as to what this QMH is and what is this template, what is it doing. Okay, let's have a look at another template that is called the continuous measurement and logging. Okay, where do you find this? Okay, again, okay, if I were to create a project, okay, you will see it over here. Okay, you create a project from that template, okay, you will get something like this. Okay, this is the project that you will be dealing with. Okay, and let's have a look at the main BI. Okay, we go to the block diagram. Okay, again, it looks a bit scary, but it shouldn't be as scary as it was last time, simply because, again, this is just a QMH. You have an event handling loop, you have a UI message handling loop. This is the QMH, basically, that's just been scaled up to do slightly different things. Okay, apart from these two, you will see that there are also 3 other loops, one of which is the acquisition message loop, and the other one is the logging message loop. Okay, so how does this work with one another? Okay, we'll go back to this in a bit. I want to discuss something first before this. Okay, which is, okay, this is how it's supposed to look like and how they are communicating with one another. You have an event handling loop at the top, okay, that basically handles all your UI events, which then sends a message to a primary message handling loop. In this case, it is the UI message loop. You can think of this UI message loop as the brains of your application. It controls what all the other loops are doing. In this instance, we have an acquisition loop that is doing some acquisition, and you have a logging loop that is basically logging the data to a certain file in a certain format in your computer. And you will see that everything is interconnected to your UI message loop. So you can think of the UI message loop, the primary message handling loop, as the brains of your computer. It controls when this guy starts, when it stops, when this starts, when it stops. Same thing for this, when does it stop. Okay, so this is just how the message, the QMH template has been scaled up to do 2 other things. Okay, in this case, acquisition and logging. Okay, so if you look back into the main program, okay, you will see that there are now different, if you look at the output of the create all message queue, there is now a cluster of 3 different message handling queues: acquisition, logging, and UI. And basically, okay, depending on which loop you are, You're just going to be taking out the acquisition, dequeue it, and do something. Okay. Similarly, for the login message loop, okay, instead of taking out the acquisition, you're taking out the login queue, dequeue, do something. Okay. So basically, in something like this, if you need to send data to the login message loop, which queue do you use? Login queue. If you need to send data or certain instruction to the acquisition message loop, which will you use? Use the acquisition queue. Okay, that's basically how it works. It's just this exact same architecture multiplied many times depending what you need to do. Each of them doing their own thing. Okay, and then you just have to send messages between one another. Okay, in order for them to do a certain set of instructions. Okay, and how does it look like? Okay, very simple. Run. Okay, when you start, you can see something coming in lah. Okay, of course I don't have a DAC device. Okay, this is just using simulate signal. But the idea is the same. So instead of simulating a signal, you just have a DAC assistant maybe, okay, or DAC MX3. Exactly the same thing. Okay. So have a look at this when you have the time. Okay. Because this is usually a lot of the application is something like this. You may wanna explore how this works and can possibly make your programs better. Okay. Final portion, okay, this is just something that you need to take note of. Okay, you will see that we have what we call state checking. Okay, in every of the loop. The reason being, and this is only implemented in 2013 and above. Okay, basically, this is just to make sure that it's not going to a state that we don't want in. So, for example, if the acquisition state is idle, you send in an acquiring state, then it can go into acquiring. If it's already in the acquiring state, you don't want to, make it go to the start acquiring state again. So this is just something that for you to know. Basically, it's not required, but it's always a good idea to have it, whereby we have state checking to make sure that the transitions are correct. Okay, we do not have conditions whereby if your user accidentally press the start button fast enough, or you're using a spoiled mouse that double clicks even if you click it once. We want to avoid that. This is when we implement a state checking method. I won't go into great detail about this, but just note about this, and if you have time, go in and have a look what this does. So now you guys know a little bit more about the QMH template. Okay, what are some of the things that we realize that a lot of people tell us some perks with regard to the QMH and how do you customize it? Okay, number one. Okay, this is again a very common way of creating a Compact Rio embedded project. Okay, again, when we talk about Compact Rio real time, this is a tightly bound system. Okay, you do not want to have a unlimited number of queue that is dedicated to your queue lah, basically. You want to always put it, just bound it up. Okay, make sure that it only reaches 1000. Okay, if you put a -1 over there, okay, basically you are telling the system you can have as many memory as you want for this queue, which is always not a good idea. So always put a maximum message queue size. Okay. And again, if you want to have a more customizable error handling code, you can always make modifications like this. So in this instance, this user basically does the categorization of different types of errors. So he has ignore error, which he simply ignores. He has non-critical error that basically restarts the Compact Rio, and if there are critical errors, he will just shut down the Compact Rio and call for help. Okay, that is something that you can do as well. Categorize your errors. And that is basically the end of my presentation. So if you guys have any questions with regards to this, I'll try my best to answer them.
Because the QMH is using string,
Yep.
so it's shared across the whole region.
Yeah.
So how do you track of who is actually sending the queue? Because it could be all
Mhm.
over in some guys.
Correct. You are right. Precisely.
So when we are debugging, right, it makes very difficult to find out who sent that queue, and one day we may lost track.
True. Okay, so for that, again, you must remember that a queue only has one reader but has multiple writers. Alright? So that the writer might be sending something that is totally bogus. Alright? Okay, something that I didn't show you earlier on is this. okay, you will see that in here, if someone sends a bogus, if someone sends something that the message, this case structure cannot find, what does it do? You'll see that you're going to be sending an error. And this error uses the string where the message is coming from. So this is how you can tell very quickly. And it's already been implemented for you already. So if let's say somebody adds an extra space at the back, okay, use the wrong language, maybe, I don't know, okay, you will basically face an error, okay, and it will pop up for sure. If any other queries maybe? So if not, okay, I will end it here first. But again, if you have any questions when you go back, okay, you try it out, you realize that there's some things that are not clear, you can let us know, then me and my colleagues will help you out. And just a little bit at the back, basically it's just saying that okay, if you okay, already have the CLD, okay, you are actually eligible to take the CLD exam immediately. So go ahead, if you think you're up for it. Okay, of course, CLD examination, you are free to use whatever architecture that you want. Simple state machine can be used, PMH can be used. If you are more adventurous, Actor framework, sure, go ahead. But very important, time yourself during the practice exams because you need 4 hours to finish. Yep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Hafiz. All right, so just a tiny bit of housekeeping so I can keep doing it between the sessions before I hand back over to Anna. So the last presentation of the official Developer Day session will be on data communication method for embedded systems, more intermediate to advanced. So looking forward to that. So just looking at the feedback form where I left off last time, which was around halfway through the first page. So the bottom section here is asking for your feedback on the specific sessions of today, how useful they were to you. So given that we're through 5 of the 6, that's probably something that you could do along the way now. That would be great. Above that, it asks about certification. So again, hopefully you've already talked to Justin or Eva or one of the NI engineers about your certification needs and opportunities. You'll see there's a few questions. One asks, would you get certified to attend this event? So what we're really asking there is how much value, we're looking to add value to the developer community, and today is about proficiency. So this is a key moment in time, but of course we want to be able to encourage you guys and work with you so that you're constantly moving along that proficiency curve. So I guess that question is asking, okay, is this something of enough value that would be a benefit if you were to get your certification? And then there's other questions about the type of certification you're interested in or what certification level you already have. So any more questions on that, please ask at any time. And then on the back, it's just a bit more of an overall satisfaction survey from the event, as well as any other specific comments or questions that you may have for us. So I think that's the basic gist of it. Again, back up the top. Tell us a little bit about your application. That's always great for us to hear. And again, if we have all your correct contact information, you don't have to complete all of that. Just make sure we know who you are. That would be great. And that's it for the housekeeping. Appreciate the couple minutes, and I'll hand you over to Anna.
Hello again. Okay, so I've got the pleasure of presenting the last session of the day, and this is a topic that is very close to what I'm working on because it's very relevant to folks who are building distributed embedded systems and need to communicate between them. So by show of hands, I'm wondering who here in the room is working on a embedded compact Rio, single board Rio, SOM,